Most people don't wake up and decide to waste their mornings. That's important to understand. No one opens their eyes and says, "Today I will be unfocused, reactive, and exhausted by noon." It doesn't happen like that. What actually happens is far more subtle and far more dangerous. People wake up without deciding anything at all. The alarm goes off. The hand reaches for the phone. Not because there is something urgent, not because there is something meaningful, but because it has become normal. And in that single, seemingly harmless moment, the day quietly slips out of their control. Here's the truth we rarely talk about. The greatest enemy of a winning day is not lack of time, it's lack of intention. When you don't decide how your day should begin, someone else will decide for you, your inbox will decide, social media will decide, the news will decide, other people's priorities will decide, and once that happens, you are no longer leading your day, you are reacting to it. Reaction feels busy, but it is not purposeful. It feels productive, but it is not meaningful. You can spend hours responding to messages, scrolling through updates, jumping from one task to another, and still end the day wondering why nothing that truly mattered moved forward. That confusion doesn't come from doing too little. It comes from doing things without intention. Winning the morning begins with a simple but uncomfortable realization. If you don't choose the direction of your day in the first moments, the rest of the day will be spent trying to regain control you never claimed in the first place. Intention is not about rigid schedules or perfect routines. Intention is about clarity. It's about knowing why you are getting out of bed before you worry about what you need to get done. Because when the why is clear, the what becomes easier to navigate. Without that why, every notification feels urgent, every request feels important, and every distraction feels justified. Think about it. When you know exactly what matters today, distractions lose their power. They still exist, but they don't lead. When you don't know what matters, everything feels equally important, and that's when stress takes over. Stress is not caused by too much to do. Stress is caused by not knowing what deserves your energy first. Starting your morning with intention means pausing before the world rushes in and asking a different kind of question, not what do I need to respond to, but who do I need to be today? Because behavior follows identity. If you decide that today you need to be focused, your choices will reflect that. If you decide that today you need to be calm, your reactions will change. If you decide that today you need to lead, you will stop waiting for permission. This is where most people struggle. They believe intention requires motivation. It doesn't. Intention requires decision. Motivation comes and goes. Decision stays. You don't wait to feel intentional. You choose it. And the act of choosing creates momentum. When you start the morning reacting, you are telling yourself a story, even if you don't realize it. You are saying, my time belongs to everyone else. You are saying, I'll focus later. You are saying, what I want can wait. Over time, that story becomes your identity. And identities are hard to break. But when you start the morning with intention, you tell a different story. You say, I decide the tone of my day. You say, what matters to me comes first. You say, I am not available to chaos before clarity. And slowly, consistently, that story reshapes how you show up everywhere else. This doesn't require an hour of meditation or a complex ritual. Sometimes intention is as simple as 5 quiet minutes before the phone turns on. Sometimes it's writing down one thing that must matter today, no matter what. Sometimes it's taking a deep breath and reminding yourself that urgency is not the same as importance. The power of intention is not in its size, it's in its timing. When you set it at the beginning, it becomes a filter. Every decision that follows runs through it. Does this align with what I decided matters today? If yes, you engage. If no, you delay or decline. Without that filter, everything gets in. People often say they want more balance, more focus, more control. But control is not something you gain at the end of the day. Control is something you claim at the beginning. You don't find it later. You establish it early. And here's the uncomfortable part. Starting with intention means accepting responsibility. You can no longer blame the day for how it went. You can no longer say it just happened because you chose how it started. And that responsibility can feel heavy. But it is also incredibly empowering because once you realize that you are not at the mercy of your mornings, You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to survive the day and start seeing yourself as someone who leads it, even imperfectly, even on hard days, even when things don't go according to plan. Winning the morning does not mean the day will be easy. It means the day will be yours. And there's a profound difference between those two things. When you start with intention instead of reaction, you don't eliminate chaos. You create stability within it. You don't control everything that happens. You control how you enter it. And that changes everything. So tomorrow morning, before the phone lights up, before the noise begins, before the world makes its demands, pause. Decide who you are going to be. Decide what truly matters. Decide how you will show up. Because the moment you choose intention, you stop wasting your mornings. And the moment you stop wasting your mornings, you begin to win your day. Most people believe their day starts when work starts. That's the lie. The day starts the moment you wake up. And whether you realize it or not, the first hour decides the direction of everything that follows. We treat the beginning of the day casually, almost carelessly, as if it's a warm-up round that doesn't count. We scroll, we rush, we multitask, we let small interruptions sneak in because they feel harmless. But what we don't see is that the first hour is not neutral. It's formative. It's the moment when your mind decides whether it will lead or follow. Think about how you treat meetings that matter. You show up on time. You prepare. You protect that time because you know the cost of missing it. Now ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Why don't you treat the first hour of your morning with the same respect? Why is a meeting with someone else more important than a meeting with your future? The first hour is when your brain is most impressionable. It hasn't been pulled in 10 directions yet. It hasn't been flooded with opinions, problems, or urgency. This is when clarity is easiest to create and discipline is easiest to practice. When you waste this hour, you don't just lose 60 minutes. You lose momentum. And momentum, once lost, is expensive to rebuild. Most people spend the rest of the day reacting because they never anchored themselves in the morning. They try to focus later, but later is already crowded. They try to calm down later, but later is already loud. They try to take control later, but later already belongs to everyone else. Protecting the first hour is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters before the noise arrives. It's about deciding that your growth, your clarity, and your direction are not optional add-ons squeezed into leftover time. They are priorities that deserve your best energy. Here's the mistake many people make. They think protecting the first hour requires perfection, a flawless routine, early alarms, extreme discipline. And when they can't maintain that fantasy, they give up entirely. But protection does not mean complexity. Protection means boundaries. It means the phone doesn't get access to you before you get access to yourself. It means you don't check messages before you check in with your mind. It means you don't rush into other people's expectations before reminding yourself of your own. The first hour is not for solving everyone else's problems. It's for strengthening the person who will face them. When you protect this time, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop feeling like the day is happening to you. You start feeling like you are stepping into the day on your terms. Even when the day becomes chaotic later, there is an internal stability that remains because you began grounded instead of scattered. This is why the first hour should not be filled with urgency. Urgency is easy to find. Clarity is not. Urgency will wait for you. Clarity won't. You have to choose it early or fight for it all day. Imagine what happens when you consistently honor this time. You send yourself a message every morning, I matter enough to prepare. And that message compounds. Confidence doesn't come from loud wins. It comes from quiet promises kept daily. When you protect the first hour, you are keeping a promise to your future self, the one who will need strength, focus, and resilience later in the day. This hour is where leadership begins. Not leadership over others, but leadership over yourself. Because if you can't lead yourself when no one is watching, it's very hard to lead anything when everyone is. You don't need to fill the hour with activity. Sometimes the most powerful use of that time is stillness, thinking, planning, reflecting, deciding what not to do. Because a well-led day is not defined by how much you complete, but by how aligned your actions are with what truly matters. People often say they don't have time in the morning, but time is rarely the real issue. Priority is, we make time for what we value. We protect what we believe matters. If the first hour keeps getting sacrificed, it's worth asking what belief is driving that choice. Protecting the first hour also means understanding its role. This is not the time to be perfect. It's the time to be intentional. The goal is not to win the entire day in 1 hour. The goal is to set a direction strong enough to guide the next 12. When you skip this step, the day becomes reactive by default. When you honor it, the day becomes responsive by design. There is a difference. Reaction is impulsive. Response is intentional. And the difference between the two is decided early. This hour is where habits are reinforced, where identity is shaped, where you prove to yourself, quietly and consistently, that you are capable of discipline even when no one is demanding it from you. That kind of discipline doesn't feel dramatic, but it is transformational. Over time, protecting the first hour builds trust, not with others, with yourself. You begin to trust that you will show up, that you will prepare, that you will not abandon your future for short-term comfort. And when trust with yourself grows, so does confidence. Not loud confidence, calm confidence. The key ND of confidence that doesn't panic when plans change. The kind that doesn't collapse under pressure. The kind that knows, deep down, I started this day right. The world will always try to take your attention. That will never change. What can change is when you give it permission. The first hour is your line in the sand. Cross it intentionally or let it be crossed for you. So tomorrow morning, don't ask how fast you can get started. Ask how deliberately you can begin. Treat that first hour like the most important meeting of your day, because it is. It's a meeting with your future. And your future is always shaped by what you choose to protect today. Most people think habits are about discipline. They're not. They're about identity. Discipline is what you do when you're trying. Identity is what you do when you're not thinking about it. And that difference explains why so many morning routines fail. People wake up with good intentions. They promise themselves that tomorrow they'll be better, more focused, more consistent, more motivated. But then motivation fades. The routine breaks and the cycle repeats. And each time it happens, something more damaging than a missed workout or a skipped journal entry occurs. Trust in oneself erodes. The problem was never effort. The problem was that the habits were built on outcomes instead of identity. When your morning habits are driven by goals alone, they require constant emotional fuel. You exercise to lose weight. You read to finish a book. You wake up early to be productive. And when the results don't show up fast enough, the habit feels pointless, so it disappears. But when habits are tied to identity, they don't need motivation. A person who sees themselves as disciplined doesn't ask whether they feel like showing up. They show up because that's who they are. A person who believes they are focused doesn't debate distraction. They avoid it instinctively. Identity removes friction. This is why lasting change doesn't start with, what do I want to achieve? It starts with, who do I believe I am? Because every behavior is a vote for an identity. And every morning you are casting those votes, whether you realize it or not. Most people underestimate how powerful the morning is in shaping identity. The brain is quiet. The noise hasn't arrived yet. The stories you tell yourself in this window are absorbed more deeply. When you skip your habits in the morning, you're not just skipping an action. You're reinforcing an identity of inconsistency. When you show up, even imperfectly, you're reinforcing an identity of reliability. Identity-based habits don't ask for intensity. They ask for honesty. You don't need to act like the person you admire. You need to act like the person you said you wanted to become. And the smallest actions count more than the dramatic ones. 5 minutes of movement is not about fitness. It's a statement. I am someone who takes care of my body. 1 page of reading is not about UT knowledge. It's a statement. I am someone who invests in growth. Writing a single sentence is not about productivity. It's a statement. I am someone who creates. When habits are framed this way, quitting becomes harder, not because the task is difficult, but because stopping feels like denying who you are. You don't stop brushing your teeth because you're busy. You don't negotiate with that habit. It's part of your identity. That's the power most people never build into their mornings. This also explains why motivation is a dangerous foundation. Motivation is emotional. Identity is logical. Motivation asks, how do I feel today? Identity asks, who am I regardless of how I feel? And mornings are when that question matters most. Because feelings are often lowest when you first wake up. If your habits depend on feeling inspired, you will lose most mornings. If your habits depend on identity, You will win even on your worst days. Building identity-based habits requires patience because identity changes slowly. But it also requires courage because you must confront the gap between who you say you are and what you do when no one is watching. The morning exposes that gap, and instead of avoiding it, winners use it. They don't aim for perfection. They aim for proof. Proof that they can keep promises to themselves. Proof that they can act with intention before the world interferes. Proof that they are becoming who they claim to be. Over time, these small proofs stack up, and something shifts internally. You stop saying, "I'm trying to be consistent," and start saying, "I am consistent." Not because you achieved a milestone, but because you've lived the identity long enough to believe it. This is why copying someone else's morning routine rarely works. You're copying actions without adopting identity. Their habits make sense for who they believe they are. Until you define who you are becoming, the habits will feel forced. Identity-based mornings begin with a decision, not a checklist, a decision about the kind of person you will be when the day hasn't asked anything of you yet. Will you be someone who delays or someone who leads? Someone who waits or someone who prepares? Someone who reacts or someone who creates? Once that decision is made, the habits become simple. Not easy, but simple. Because they're aligned, there will be days you miss. That's human. Missing once does not break identity. Quitting does. The goal is not to never fail. The goal is to never abandon the person you're becoming because of a temporary lapse. The most powerful part of identity-based habits is what they protect you from. They protect you from self-doubt, from inconsistency, from the quiet voice that says, maybe you're not the kind of person who follows through. Each morning you show up, that voice gets quieter, and eventually it disappears. Winning the day is not about doing more. It's about being someone different before the day begins. Someone who doesn't rely on motivation. Someone who doesn't negotiate with their values. Someone who acts in alignment with their identity even when it's uncomfortable. So if you want to stop wasting your mornings, stop asking what habit you should add. Ask who you need to become. Then let your mornings be the evidence. Because when your habits reflect your identity, you don't just win the morning. You redefine yourself. Every morning, before you even realize it, a decision is being made. Not a dramatic one, not a conscious one, but a powerful one. A decision about who gets access to your mind first. And for most people, that access is given away without thought. The phone lights up, notifications wait, news updates scroll endlessly. Other people's opinions, problems, and priorities rush in before you've had a chance to form your own. And slowly, quietly, your focus is diluted before the day has truly begun. This is why so many people feel busy but unfulfilled, informed but unfocused, connected but unproductive. They consume before they create. And consumption, when it comes first, doesn't just fill time. It shapes thinking. When you start your morning consuming, you train your brain to respond rather than lead. You absorb instead of define. You react instead of decide. And that pattern do, as in stay in the morning, it follows you into every meeting, every task, every conversation. Creating before consuming is not about rejecting information. It's about sequencing. It's about understanding that the order in which you engage with the world matters more than how much you engage with it. Creation is how you assert direction. Consumption is how you receive influence. If influence arrives before direction is set, it takes control. And most people don't realize they've lost control because it feels normal. The morning is the one moment of the day when your thoughts are most your own. They haven't been interrupted yet. They haven't been challenged yet. They haven't been pulled in opposing directions yet. This is where original thinking lives. And when you give that space away too quickly, you don't get it back. Creating in the morning doesn't require talent. It requires intention. It could be writing down ideas, planning the day, solving a problem, reflecting on a decision, thinking deeply about something that actually matters. The act itself is less important than the signal it sends. The signal is this: I lead my thinking before I absorb yours. This simple shift changes everything. When you create first, consumption becomes selective. You don't scroll endlessly. You look for what supports your direction. You don't absorb opinions mindlessly. You evaluate them. You don't feel overwhelmed by information because you have a filter. Without that filter, everything Energy feels urgent and important. With it, clarity emerges. Most people believe they need to know more to do better, but knowledge without direction creates confusion. Direction without knowledge creates progress, and mornings are for setting direction. This is why the most dangerous form of consumption is not entertainment, it's comparison. When you consume other people's highlights before defining your own path, you begin the day measuring yourself against standards you didn't choose. You feel behind before you've even started. You feel inadequate without evidence, and that emotional weight follows you all day. Creating first protects you from that trap. It grounds you in your own journey. It reminds you that progress is personal, not performative. That your work is not to impress, but to express. This is also where confidence quietly forms, not the loud kind that seeks validation, but the calm kind that comes from knowing you've already shown up for yourself. When you create in the morning, you've already contributed something of value, even if no one else sees it. And that changes how you walk into the day. People often say they don't have anything to create. That's rarely true. Everyone has thoughts. Everyone has ideas. Everyone has decisions waiting to be made. The problem is not lack of content. It's lack of space. And space is created by saying no to consumption, at least temporarily. Creating before consuming doesn't mean you never check your phone in the morning. It means you don't let it set the tone. It means you don't give it the first word. Because the first word often becomes the loudest voice. This habit also builds mental resilience. When you train your mind to generate instead of absorb, you become less dependent on external stimulation. Silence becomes comfortable. Thinking becomes natural. Focus becomes sustainable. And in a world that profits from distraction, that is a competitive advantage. Over time, this practice rewires how you engage with information. You stop feeling obligated to keep up with everything. You start choosing what deserves your attention. And attention, when directed intentionally, becomes one of the most powerful tools you have. Winning mornings are not about doing more. They are about thinking better. And thinking better starts with protecting the source of your thoughts. When you consistently create before you consume, you reclaim authorship of your day. You are no longer a character reacting to the plot. You become the one writing it. The world will always have something to show you, sell you, or tell you. That will not change. What can change is whether you let it speak first. So tomorrow morning, before the scroll begins, before the noise arrives, before the opinions rush in, pause. Put something into the world before the world puts something into you, because the people who win their days are not the ones who know the most. They are the ones who decide first. Most people don't fail because they aim too low. They fail because they aim too dramatically. They believe that change must be loud to be real, that progress must be intense to be meaningful. And so they design mornings that look impressive on paper but collapse in real life. They wake up one day and decide everything will change. Earlier alarms, longer workouts, perfect routines, total discipline. And for a few days, maybe even a week, it works. Until it doesn't. Fatigue sets in. Life interrupts. Motivation fades. And when the routine breaks, they don't adjust, they abandon it. This is why consistency beats intensity every single time. Not because intensity is bad, but because intensity is unsustainable. And anything unsustainable will eventually fail, no matter how powerful it feels in the moment. Consistency is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look impressive on social media, but it builds something far more valuable than temporary momentum. It builds trust. When you show up for yourself every morning in small ways, you send a message that you can be relied upon. And that message compounds. Self-trust is not built by doing extraordinary things once. It's built by doing ordinary things repeatedly. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. In reality, discipline is about designing habits so small and so aligned that they don't require emotional negotiation. You don't need to hype yourself up to do them. You just do them. 5 minutes of focus done daily is more powerful than 1 hour done occasionally. Not because the hour doesn't matter, but because the 5 minutes actually happen. And what happens consistently shapes identity. What happens occasionally does not The goal of winning the morning is not to exhaust yourself before the day begins. It's to create stability. Stability creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. And confidence creates better decisions as the day unfolds. Intensity often creates pressure. Pressure creates resistance. And resistance creates excuses. Consistency removes pressure. There is no fear of failure when the task is manageable. There is no burnout when the expectation is realistic. And there is no guilt when progress is steady instead of extreme. This is why small habits are so powerful in the morning. The morning sets emotional tone. When you complete something small and intentional early, you experience a sense of completion before chaos arrives. That feeling doesn't disappear. It carries forward. You don't need to win the whole day in the morning. You just need to prove to yourself that you can start. Starting builds momentum. And momentum, once created, makes everything else easier. Consistency also protects you from perfectionism. When the standard is perfection, missing once feels like failure. When the standard is consistency, missing once feels like feedback. You adjust and continue. You don't quit. People who win Your mornings understand this deeply. They don't measure success by how hard the morning felt. They measure it by whether they showed up. And showing up is always within reach. There will be mornings when energy is low, when sleep was short, when motivation is absent. Intensity demands that you push anyway. Consistency asks a better question. What is the smallest version of this habit I can honor today? And that question changes everything. Instead of skipping entirely, you adapt. Instead of breaking the chain, you reinforce it. Instead of letting one hard morning turn into a lost week, you protect the rhythm. Rhythm is more important than effort. Effort fluctuates. Rhythm sustains. Over time, consistent mornings create an internal calm. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling like you're always trying to catch up. Because you know that no matter what the day brings, you've already done something that matters. This calm is not accidental. It's earned. It comes from knowing that your progress is not dependent on perfect conditions. It's dependent on simple actions repeated faithfully. Consistency also builds resilience. When habits are small and steady, they survive disruption. Travel doesn't break them. Busy days don't erase them. Bad moods don't destroy them. They bend, but they don't disappear. This is how real change happens. Not in dramatic overhauls, but in quiet repetitions. Not in bursts of effort, but in daily commitments. Winning mornings are not about becoming a different person overnight. They are about becoming slightly more aligned with your values every day. And alignment, repeated often enough, transforms identity. The irony is that consistency eventually creates intensity. Small actions accumulate. 5 minutes becomes 10, 10 becomes 30. Not because you forced it, but because you earned it. Growth that emerges natural. Why lasts longer than growth that is imposed? So if you want to stop wasting your mornings, stop trying to dominate them. Respect them instead. Design them to be repeatable. Design them to fit real life. Design them to succeed even on hard days. Because the mornings that change your life are not the ones you remember vividly. They are the ones you barely notice because they happen every day. Consistency doesn't feel heroic, but it is. And in the long run, it wins every time. Every great change begins with a decision. And this speech has never been about waking up earlier, following a perfect routine, or copying someone else's habits. It has been about something far deeper and far more important, choosing to lead your day instead of letting it lead you. Mornings are not just a start, they are a statement. A statement about what you value, what you protect, and who you believe you are becoming. When you waste your mornings, you are not losing time, you are giving away direction. When you take ownership of them, even in small ways, you reclaim control over how your life unfolds. Winning your morning does not require radical change. It requires intentional change. Starting your day with purpose instead of reaction reminds you that your time is yours. Protecting the first hour shows that your future is worth preparation. Building habits rooted in identity proves that you are not waiting to become someone better someday. You are becoming that person today. Creating before consuming allows you to think clearly before the world gets loud. And choosing consistency over intensity ensures that progress is not temporary, but permanent. These habits are not about doing more. They are about doing what matters first. They are about creating alignment between who you say you are and how you actually live. Because confidence does not come from motivation. It comes from self-trust. And self-trust is built quietly, one morning at a time. There will be days when you fall short. That does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. The goal was never perfection. The goal was ownership. Ownership of your attention, ownership of your energy, ownership of your direction. And every morning you choose intention over reaction. You strengthen that ownership. The truth is, you don't need more hours in the day. You need clarity in the first ones. When you start the day aligned, the rest of the day becomes easier to navigate, even when it's difficult. Challenges don't disappear, but your ability to handle them improves. So tomorrow morning, don't try to be extraordinary. Be intentional. Don't aim to overhaul your life in one day. Aim to show up for yourself in one small, meaningful way. That single choice, repeated consistently, will compound into confidence, focus, and momentum. Because when you stop wasting your mornings, you don't just win your day. You change the trajectory of your life. And it all begins with the simple decision to start on purpose.